Hi there, let me tell you about the unholy trinity of German thrash metal EPs. Over a 12-month period between 1986 and 1987, Sodom, Kreator and Destruction, arguably the big three of German thrash metal, or big four including Tankard, they all released great EPs, and that is what this video is going to celebrate. We're going to have a look at these beauties one by one, and then at the end I'm going to rank them and tell you which is my favourite, which is going to be quite the painful process because these are magical items. Let me tell you what makes EPs so great and why I really miss EPs like this. So let's look at these things in chronological order. That's the fairest way to do it. Kreator Flag of Hate. This was released in 1986 and it came between the Pleasure to Kill album and the Terrible Certainty album. Although weirdly, when I interviewed Miller Petroza, the band's main man, recently, he was a bit vague on whether they recorded this before Pleasure to Kill or after. Does anybody know for sure? The title track is a re-recording of the song Flag of Hate from the band's 1985 debut, Endless Pain. You've got that on the A-side there, along with another track. Unusually, the A-side has two tracks on it, the masterful Take Their Lives, which has an incredible choppy, chuggy riff. Take Their Lives is quite an underappreciated Kreator song, I think. You don't really hear much about it or see it mentioned at all, and I don't think the band have played it. God knows when the last time they played it live was. I'll have to have a look at Setlist FM. Actually, the reason why side B is dedicated solely to this track is that it's quite a long one. Awakening of the Gods, a most incredible militaristic riff that is just absolutely prime Kreator. It's one of my favourite Kreator songs for sure. There were different versions of this. I've actually got 3 editions of Flag of Hate. That one doesn't have an inner sleeve. This one does. Bit of Noise Records nostalgia there for you. With the same 3 tracks on it. The ones I've just shown you, there are 2 versions of the European release of Flag of Hate. And here is the US release of Flag of Hate on Combat Records, which looks very much the same, but has extra tracks. Yeah, so all the tracks have been shoved onto the A-side that are on the European edition, then the B-side adds 3 tracks from Endless Pain, because I assume back then the band were totally new to America and so they wanted to put some Endless Pain material on there. I must admit, it does seem like the band should have put songs on there from Pleasure to Kill, seeing as that's a far superior record to Endless Pain, although I love Endless Pain, don't get me wrong, and in fact you'll see that I give Endless Pain some love in my ranking of the first 6 Kreator albums video, which I'll put a link to on screen at the end of this video. Next up on the German thrash metal trail of EPs is Destruction's Mad Butcher. Now there's a great cover for you, absolutely, look at all the madness on display there. Look at the Mad Butcher, looking reasonably normal, but in his reflection, he's mad, I tell you. He's totally mad. He's as mad as a goose on stilts. And there's an interesting selection of tracks on this EP. It's another re-recording. It's only just occurred to me that the Destruction and Kreator EPs share the same thing, that the A-side is a re-recording of a track from an earlier album. In this case, Destruction re-recorded Mad Butcher, which was on their Sentence of Death EP, of course. And it's a really good re-recording. The production is much better, much clearer, and it kind of reflects a little bit more the way the band were heading towards a more technical metal direction. And then we have a cover version, The Damned here, which is by the Plasmatics. And that's a pretty good cover. It's an interesting song. You know what? I don't think I've ever actually heard the original. I really should give that a listen. Is it any good? Tell me in comments. And of course, I want you to get down in comments and give me your opinions on these EPs, how much you love this unholy trinity, and what your own ranking would be. We haven't got to the ranking yet. This is chronological. I'm going to rank them at the end. On side 2 of Mad Butcher, we have Reject Emotions, which is a brand new Destruction song. In fact, it's kind of the only brand new Destruction song, and this one really shows you where the band were heading, because this EP comes between the amazing Eternal Devastation album and the equally amazing, in a different way, Release from Agony album. And Reject Emotions is very technical, and it's still looked upon very fondly to this day, and the band included it in their set, you might remember, in that pandemic set that they did in, was it Switzerland? And then we have a fairly brief instrumental at the end called The Last Judgment, which rounds things off very nicely. There's no inner sleeve for my Mad Butcher. Can anyone tell me if there was an inner sleeve on any of the releases of Mad Butcher? I know there's a red vinyl version. I'd like to get that someday. And now we move to October 1987. Sodom's Expurse of Sodomy EP. I don't know what Expurse of Sodomy actually means. Sodom were great, even in the early days, for including words in their song titles that even English-speaking people didn't understand, like proselytism real? What? I love this cover. The Sodom logo has never looked better. Look how shiny it looks. It looks kind of really cool and kind of showbiz in a funny kind of way. And then on the back, this is really nice. We have the lyrics for the 3 songs on this EP. So we have the kind of title track. It's not really the title track because it's called Sodomy and Lust. What a delight that is. Play that to your grandmother. Yeah, the lyrics are pretty much what you'd expect, really. By the way, Sodomy and Lust is a brilliant song. It's one of the best Sodom songs ever. And then My Atonement is more of an epic track with different tempos and lots of changes and riffs. And then Conqueror is a bit more of a straightforward up-tempo song, which is very nice indeed. This EP has the classic lineup, of course, of Tom, Angel Ripper, Chris Witch Hunter, and Frank Blackfire. Slightly weirdly, this EP only came out about 2 months before the band's album, Persecution Mania. And I'm not quite sure what was going on there because the 2 releases don't share any kind of tracks. Maybe Expurse of Sodomy was released to coincide with a tour or something, I can't remember. Can anyone shed any light on that? Let me tell you what makes EPs so great and why I really miss EPs like this. On an album, say an album with 13 tracks, each track has less responsibility to be brilliant, to hold the whole thing up. Whereas on an EP, if you have 3 tracks, then you have to make sure everyone is great in order to make the whole thing great. So each song shoulders more responsibility, and I kind of think that bands tended to work a bit harder on EPs sometimes than they did on albums. Tell me what you think about that, would you? It's time for the painful process of ranking these EPs. But before we get into the ranking, if you're enjoying this video and you'd like to see more such videos about metal and thrash metal, and usually a lot of German thrash metal, then hit like and, more importantly, hit subscribe and the little bell notification. That was metal, isn't it? Oh yes, I am metal through and through. I'm basically an Iron Man. Now, in 3rd place, and let me stress, all of these releases are legendary and I love them. You can at me if you like, it's fine. I like a good friendly debate. All good violent fun down in comments. 3rd place is Mad Butcher. And the reason for that is that it doesn't have so many new tracks on it. You know, and actually, to be honest with you, Mad Butcher has never been one of my absolute favourite Destruction songs. I like it a lot, and this is a great version. This is the definitive version of Mad Butcher. But then it's got a cover song, you know, which is kind of okay. You might have kind of sensed my lack of excitement about it when I was initially talking about it. And then Reject Emotions is great song. The Last Judgment, you know, an instrumental. It was a bit, this EP compared to the other 2 is a little bit kind of, it's a bit piecemeal. I think that's a good word for it. It's a classic release, and Destruction are one of my favourite bands. But in terms of these EPs, even Destruction have been beaten by Sodom and Kreator. But which order do Sodom and Kreator come in? In the number 2 spot is Expurse of Sodomy. I love this thing. I absolutely love it. Like I said, Sodomy and Lust is one of the greatest Sodom songs, and My Atonement and The Conqueror are no slouches either. It's absolutely great. It's a great EP. I don't have any criticisms of it. It's just that this is even better. In terms of consistency, this kind of ties into what I was talking about earlier, really, about EPs. This could be, you know, the most consistent Kreator release ever. And I know that sounds it sounds a bit scathing in a funny kind of way, but I don't mean it like that. It's just that it's a record with 3 amazing tracks on it. Or in this case, 6 tracks, but let's forget about that for a moment. And what an epic song Awakening of the Gods really is. It's one of my favourite Kreator songs for sure. In fact, all of the songs on this EP are among my favourite Kreator songs, I would say. Actually, I've just noticed that this one starts with Take Their Lives and not Flag of Hate. That's interesting, isn't it? But yeah, you've got Flag of Hate, which is a great re-recording of the original song. You've got Take Their Lives, which is an awesome track. If you haven't heard Take Their Lives, then search for it on whatever, you know, streaming platform you have. Or, of course, you might pull this back off your shelf and give it another listen. And here's a weird thing about Take Their Lives, actually. It's only on this record that Take Their Lives, as far as I can tell, has been presented in its entirety. There's a really brief little drum fill at the start of Take Their Lives, which seems to be, as far as my ears can tell, missing from all subsequent releases. Now, can any Kreator files talk to me about that and tell me if I'm wrong? Because this EP has been included on many subsequent Kreator releases and reissues and what have you. Anyway, yes, Flag of Hate is an awesome, awesome record, and so are these. Get down in comments, tell me what you think about these beauties, tell me how you would rank them. Here's a video of me ranking the first 6 Kreator albums here that you might want to watch, or here's a video that YouTube has decided automatically using its incredibly sophisticated algorithm that you might want to watch. Please hit like and subscribe if you've enjoyed this video, and to conclude, metal.